make sure that you subscribe to Star Wars in a Single File, the one, the only, Fantha Treks Radio on iTunes, for all your Star Wars news in a single file. And now it's time for Fantha Treks Radio's The Fantha from Down Under. G'day, mate, gal. This is Adam O'Brien, the host here at Fantha Treks Radio's The Fantha from Down Under. Joining me today on this here podcast is the one, the only Mark Hurliman, co-host of Star Wars Beyond the Films, and of course works on a number of things, and of course Star Wars Report. And we're going to be chatting almost 12 months to the day that we chatted to him last on my previous show, and we're going to be chatting all things in the world of Star Wars right here on the Fantha Treks, the Fantha from Down Under. Here, Quinlan's Canteen on the Gold Coast of Australia. Joining me all the way from the United States is a dear pal, Mark Hurliman, who you know from many amazing Star Wars podcasts, Star Wars Report, and more. Star Wars Beyond the Films. Mate, how are you?
It's great, man. I'm great. It's exciting to be able to travel the world this fast.
DeLorean needed, no, but certainly you're travelling forward in time, and I'm travelling backward in time. Be able to catch up with you today. Mate, let's start it off today. We've got time traveller himself, Keanu Reeves. Whoa, dude! I'm like a Jedi, man! And we've seen him in poses, mate, as a Jedi Knight. Old Republic, what do you reckon?
Oh, man, I would be excited. I always feel like anytime I like something a lot, it's never going to happen, though. So I'm like, man, maybe if the right people like this, maybe something will happen. But when I think about it, when I think about the Old Republic game, that MMO and stuff, and the character arc that they had there, and the character model that they used for most of the games, Keanu would fit that bill.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, he's played similar characters. I mean, Neo is one, but really think about it. 47 Ronin, is he not a Jedi in that? Oh yeah. No, yeah, I can see that working. And he's got all the discipline. Well, he does. And you know what's even funnier? I just had a Skype call with a dear friend of yours, Mr. David B. You know who, Sendan. And he said, "Oh, Mark's on about the Keanu Reeves thing again." And I said, yeah, it's true. But we actually talked about it, and it's interesting to always hear his take, because he's got a unique perspective on those ones too. But, again, everyone's talking about it, so it's obviously on the mind of fans to get him in there. I had a bit of a spoof take of it, where I thought Alex Winter should be Malik.
Alex Winter.
Bill S. Preston, Esquire.
Okay, God, I should have got that one. No, that would be fun. I would dig that. See, I think the thing that appeals to me and a good chunk of people right now is the idea of going back in time and establishing that in canon. I mean, with Legends being Legends, everything about the Old Republic right now is the only part of Legends that's still going on. So it's like, to take any of that and make it legitimate is one aspect of a win. But the other side of it is, I've always been a fan of telling stories that far into the past or far in the future, like Legacy did 140 years later, because you got a lot more freedom, especially the farther back you go. I mean, I was just talking to Riley and Bruce about, like, you take Alderaan, for example, go back 25,000 years in the past, have some event that wipes out almost all life on the planet, and you could have it be built back up to the point it is what you see in the films later because of all the time that's traveled. And to me, that's a great opportunity for fresh storytelling, because you can do anything you want in that aspect.
You can. One of the things that I was talking to Dave about earlier is something I think would tie into, if you did the Mandalorian series, as a stepping stone into seeing it live action in that world of Mandalorian. Where is this going? That's not to say that this is a Mandalorian itself. It's just the Mandalorian. But maybe this is a new family that we're going to follow. We'll see maybe the Benioff films could end up being, maybe you see, years and years before what happened to them. Maybe the Jedi end up being the bad guys in this one. Maybe it's the, like swap it around where we're seeing the perspectives different. Now that would be a fresh take of Star Wars.
No, I'm down. The first thing I was thinking about that is you have that aspect of the family established. I mean, what did Kanan say about the Mandalorians in Malachor? They already hinted at the big war that happened a long time ago. So we could get that and also have that connection, like you're saying, from the future of this Mandalorian family who's talking about those times and gives us more of an idea. Because, think about the Clone Wars, that was just a castaway comment by old Alec Guinness. And everybody was like, what the heck does that mean? Like, I remember thinking it was clone on clone action. Like, we were going to
Yeah.
see Kenobi fighting a Kenobi clone. Boy, was I wrong.
Well, we almost got that with, Head of the Empire and the Thrawn trilogy. The whole idea was, yes, let's bring back a clone of exactly that, Kenobi. We almost got that in the original classic Star Wars comics with, Kenobi. Well, yeah, he came back as a clone. It wasn't a clone. It ended up being an actor, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was an actor, I believe. Well, there was a couple different stories where they had that, because there was also Don Juan Quixote, who was,
it was too
similar to Kenobi.
Don Juan Kenobi. Terry Gilliam, Star Wars. Oh.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think about the aspect of, when I always think about the big powerhouses of Star Wars and the element of the storytelling, it was always the Sith, the Jedi, and the Mandalorians. They always prominently figured into my love. Karen Travis did some wonderful things for the Mandalorians and helped me embrace the clone culture. Not everyone loved what she did, but I really, it meshed with what I was seeing a lot. So I like to see something that has that kind of culture aspect of the way the Mandalorians were. Like, that'd be cool to see the aspect of what pushed them into a war with the Jedi. Like, I think that would be a really interesting angle to play. And let's say go full on, Klingon with it, and they're like, well, Mandalorians had to be put down because they were bad. But from the angle you're talking about, with the Jedi being the bad guys, like that, to play that up and to play it up well, that's exciting. Like, that gets me really jazzed.
It does, because I think, again, this is just an idea. This is, who knows what they're actually going to do and if they ever do it. But what I like is the idea that you could take a character or characters that we don't know that well. We know them from the outside. We know the armor. We know the mystique. We know the mysticism of what the Mandalorians are. We know them from the games. We know Concord Dawn. I mean, crikey, from the KOTOR, it was great. But what if you can take that back and go, well, why are they militaristic? Why are they this way? Because they've probably been stomped on by the Sith, by the Jedi for years and years, and this is their way of survival. It's their way of actually getting back to, right, this is how we should live, this is how we should really go to that next level. And then they get to a certain power where their might is strong enough to actually take on the Jedi. And why not bring in the Darksaber? Throw that in there too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's just it. You've got that pre-established through the Clone Wars with the Vizsla family. I mean, it was, I believe it was Tor Vizsla, I think, was the first one that started it. I could be wrong on that. I remember it's one of the Vizslas. But yeah, to have that aspect, to have that culture explored in that angle, I think is just brilliant. And to do it in a way where, the culture, we know they're a violent culture already, but we also know from Rebels that the armor is something that gets passed down. So what if we got characters that, they designed the whole character around Sabine's arm bracelet and, Tor Vizsla's chest plate, and like, that's the element that ties into that, because that's the piece that was literally handed down to them. I mean, like, there's some angles that they could get into with this that would be really cool, because the Mandalorian culture is the closest to Celtic culture that I could think of off the top of my head when it comes to their patterns and the imagery of their Mandalorian armor and things like that. I mean, it's a more modernized version of it and stuff, but a lot of chainmail links and stuff like that. Like, I would love to see how they would explore that in the old times. I mean, I could see it being way more Celtic than what we see in Rebels and in the Clone Wars.
And I've always thought too, like, if you're going to follow like where this culture, established that look, that aesthetic that they've got, then you could look in. Obviously, Celtic, as you say, is a massive influence on how that's written. But I've also thought with Celtic always comes a Viking sort of element as well, and I'm always thinking that maybe that can be that offshoot of the more Commando-esque part of it. So you've got your standard Mandalorian, but then you would have that sort of Concord Dawn, Viking sort of, if anything, almost more of that paramilitary.
Well, and to think, if they kept a core group of people on Mandalore, the planet, right? And the rest were the ones that were going out doing the Viking raids and stuff and establishing the colonies. I mean, that is where the Viking is definitely the better way to go about it, actually. I mean, you're more on the nose than I was with that. Because that's exactly what they were doing. I mean, they were, well, especially in Legends. I mean, that was the main thing, was, like you were saying, being tired of used as the pawns. That's exactly what the Sith and the Jedi were doing. And the Sith more of all. I mean, the Sith would blackmail them at times when they couldn't get them to openly, pay them and stuff like that to do their bidding. But yeah, I mean, you think about years of that being played in, and where they decide to drop the record, and drop the needle on the record, you can find out, like, they've got a whole backstory that's all planned to be told through flashbacks in a more modern setting that still isn't as present as The Mandalorian. But The Mandalorian itself, that TV show, they could be seeding all of this. Like, you could have so many references and stuff to things that you would never know were there, and they were just there from the start. Like, that would be a really good opportunity.
I think so too. I mean, again, there's just a few other areas in Star Wars that I think, even the books haven't covered. And I think going back to Alderaan was a perfect example. But I think we've seen Corellia once. But why not? Let's see something completely different, but starting on Corellia. I mean, that would be an interesting way of sort of opening up the boundaries of stuff that we previously know a little bit about, but really just letting it go. Let's get stuck into what are these people doing. They're shipbuilders, but there's been shipbuilder cultures before, like the Irish.
Mm-hmm. Well, and think about the differences between what we've seen of Corellia in Legends versus canon. There's no five brothers, that we know of. If that was there, that would be awesome, because that was one of the things about the New Jedi Order as it went on, was they were exploring that part of the Corellian culture. And you found out, like, the twin planets that were orbiting Centerpoint Station, they were placed there, and the Maw itself was constructed. You found out there was these celestial beings that had set up the galaxy at one point, and Corellia was a prime example of it. And there was all that mystery involved with that, and what, I mean, they never even got into all of that with Legends. They just skimmed the top of that. Like, that was such a my jam kind of thing. It felt Indiana Jones, like you're like discovering all these great new mysteries that were ancient and powerful, and yeah, man. Like, and they could do something like that easily by just bringing in Centerpoint Station. Yeah. I mean, they don't even need to do anything else with the rest of the planets and talk about it all being moved. You can just have that massive station and be like, and no one really knows how it got here. Like, it's just massive, but that's where the Corellians got all their advanced technology, because they just managed to find a way to get there. Like Earthlings, they got to the moon. Well, they got to Centerpoint. Once they got there, it was like heaven. There was like, Mecha attack, yeah! Like, they're the first ones to get all to hyperspace. Why? Because they basically pirated it all. I mean, they could have like one section of the station that they stripped, and the station's just so big that they left the rest intact. They're like, we didn't need it all. We could just, after we got the first 10%, we could just look at it and use the tools, man. Technology is a wonderful thing. God bless advancement.
I was looking at the other day how you've got different franchises have done it before. One of the big ones was Robotech. In the Macross saga, you have the Robotech actual factories. So the Robotech master factories practically come to Earth. I mean, and then Rick Hunter's like, oh my God, I can make endless Vertech fighters, and he literally will go over there and they make the SDF-3, all these huge advanced things. And I mean, that's the whole idea of that story, is the Zentradi ship lands on Earth and they go, wow, 40-foot mecha? Oh my God, and they actually build that. To do that in Star Wars would be amazing. It's a little bit like Arcto. What is Arcto all about? Could we go back to the early days and actually see these prime Jedi that we hear about in the book but never talked about in the movie, which were obviously a light and balance of light and dark together, And I think that's that. A lot of the mysticism of grey Jedi or grey Force users have come out of this. And this is the Lucasfilm reaction to actually put it into the story. Yes, you need light and dark. You need balance. This is what George was talking about. Balance.
Yeah, the only reference to that from the book is the scene, I think, where Rey and Luke, they crack the seal. And you see the seal in one other scene. And I remember when I saw that, I was just like, oh, man, what if that's Snoke's people? Because they haven't mentioned anything about where he came from. So it's like, he just came out of nowhere. He's in the middle of the outside of the galaxy kind of thing, so to speak, because the First Order has left the galaxy as we know it to regroup and rebuild. Okay, they're under Admiral Sloane's direction at this point. Gallius Rax has passed away and made this all happen. And somewhere we go from that to now he is the supreme leader of this group. and Ray Sloane's nowhere. Like, what the heck? And we know he's force powerful, and he's got unlimited resources, as we're told. But it's just like, what does that really look like? And when I first saw that image and stuff of the Prime Jedi, and they talked about that, and you look at it, it almost has the shape of him, or the classic X-Files alien kind of look to it, almost, you know. But if you think about it, Snoke has that kind of look, you could say, from an abstract point of view.
He does. And, you know, look, I mean, in fairness, I think what we are seeing is a lot of what, again, Last Jedi is open to interpretation about how Luke and Snoke work their powers in this. I think our first thing is the whole opening of him opening the minds of both Rey and Ren to talk to each other. So that's the first thing, is that he's endless. He can attach himself to other planets and basically impose himself on them. And obviously Luke has that power now too. Did he learn that from Snoke? I think he did. So I think he's actually learnt from Snoke. That's something I think has been a big thing, is that he's gone around to these different, or at least from the people of Snoke. You know, so some learnings from those texts. Here's the interesting thing though. Snoke, the death of Snoke is, to me, it looks too easy. Not only just for that's part of parcel of him, the pride of him being too strong and ego and all that, and that somebody like Ren would actually just do it. Like, he knew that if he hid his thoughts, he could do it. But that still, to me, feels a little bit like Luke casting his self, or a shadow of himself, onto another world. Except Snoke can do it, but leave a mortal signature. And that's what I have a feeling of.
Yeah, see, I was thinking similar along the lines of the Emperor from the Old Republic game, how he was kind of going from body to body to body. And I remember thinking back, granted, that game's story is still going, but I'm pretty sure at this point the Emperor's story's over. I could be wrong. Yeah. But I was thinking at one point, like, how cool would it be to find out that through the Order of Two, or the Rule of Two, that Emperor managed to stay alive, and he is now Emperor Palpatine. Like, I was, like, always hoping that was going to be the direction they go. But now, if you apply something like that to Snoke, we don't know anything about him. We know he's got unlimited resources. We know he's super powerful. Mm-hmm. We don't know if his bodies are, say, clone bodies, and he happens to be away from his cloning facility, so he's been riding this one body, and that's why it's, like, all destroyed. That's just one example that they could go. There's so many angles they could play with that, but, like, you're talking, like, doing, like, a force projection, but leaving immortal remains. That's similar to Timothy Zahn.
Yes.
What he had going on with, what the heck was his name? George Cardass. George Cardass was a non-force sensitive that ran into Yoda on Dathomir, or in Dagobah, during a battle between a Dark Jedi and Yoda. And while those two were fighting, like, he got injured, and Yoda helped heal him back to life. And in the process of doing that, somehow he became awoke, so to speak, or Yoda's Force presence awoke something in him, and he was able to lightly kind of touch on the Force, and this woke in him a sense of wanting to learn more, and he goes off and he discovers some people and learns some things. But I don't know, it just reminds me of that to a degree.
Oh, it does. And now, I've got to say, this is a funny story, this one. You've probably seen the Bricktop Star Wars out there, or Snatch Wars. It's on YouTube, where you can see, basically, Bricktop, the same character you see, Harold, go and get me a cup of tea, will you, Harold? That British gangster. And he's voicing over all of Vader's, I think they call him Brick Vader. Hello, This is Brick Vader. Righto, we're going to stomp him, Harold. Let's get him, a classic, style British gangster, which is just perfect. But I've always thought somebody has to take that Snoke footage and get Hux to be Harold and go, put the kettle on, will you, Harold? Put the kettle on. Get me a cup of tea. Just have Hux going, I ain't doing that, and then do that stomping move that he does at the start of Last Jedi. That's what you get for not getting me some twinings.
Well, that's basically what Cardass does later when Luke and Mara go to find him in, like, I think it's like the 5th or 6th book that Zahn put out at the time. I think it's Visions of the Future or Spectres of the Past. And they run across him, and he, like, opens a hole into nothing, reaches in and kind of pulls out a cup. And he made it out of the Force, like, literally made physical matter. And Luke was like, what? Like, so, that's an ability that we have seen in Legends that we haven't seen brought in canon. And it's my feeling when it came to Legends was anything was possible with the Force. It all depended on how you decided to approach things. You know, there were multiple ways you could wipe someone's memory. Jaina Solo, I want to say, she like was looking at a dial of a clock, and she just wound the hands back, and Lobaka was like, I don't remember that anymore. Whereas others would reach in and grab and pluck things out. Jax Pavan had special ability to see people's Force presence tendrils and stuff. Like, Karan Horn had special abilities. Like, the fact that you had that openness, that to me was what the Force was always about. So to see those aspects slowly make their way into canon again, well, I say again, to make it into canon and be official in any sense of fashion, to me, that's awesome because that opens the realm of possibilities for what the Force can and can't do. One of the things that me and Bruce are going to be talking about on the Star Wars Report is Force Ghosts. Because to me, I'm a big pusher of the fact that I really think Darksiders could do it. We've got demonstrable presence in canon of situations that are close, but the closest we get so far is basically possessed objects. Mammon in the Darth Vader comic right now, he's like trapped in a mask. We had the presence from the Rebels show that she was trapped in a holocron kind of thing, where the Sith attach themselves to objects. But to me, that's just one more avenue of getting to that Force Ghost thing. So I love the fact that we've got that openness there. And when I think about, if we play stories back in the Old Republic era, what we got in Legends before, those were always the ones that were the most mystical, the ones that were the funnest, because you had the light and the dark were so just at each other's throat. It was such a dichotomy of good and evil at that time.
100%, and I think that's it. Like, the ultimate thing is to be able to live forever, to last longer. And, Qui-Gon Jinn has had the training. Now, I'm going to show you a photo. You folks won't be able to see this, obviously, but if you can see this photo, Qui-Gon Jinn is here. And he's being trained by the Delta Force.
Nice.
So Liam Neeson, believe it or not, folks, we've just found out the other day, after starting the new show on which is called Lethal Mullet, and it's a celebration of 80s action cinema, we actually found that Liam Neeson is in one shot. Steve James is going, righto, I'm going to take out the terrorists. And in the background there, you got Liam Neeson. It's almost like his Brian Mills character going, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but you will not steal my Pepsi can. I
told my mom and dad one thing. I was going to learn by this gentleman in front of you, and I will learn how to kill and be the most killing killer you've ever seen kill.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now, I want to talk quickly about the books themselves. Now, obviously, you've had a couple of years now in this canon universe, which, obviously, we've still got Legends there. Legends there is for us at all times. Personally, it's my choice to go to reading, because the one thing I think the new ones are missing is, to be honest, a sense of adventure. Those Legends books had that Star Wars adventure feel. I've enjoyed most of the new books, but they're playing out more like TV melodrama. Yeah.
So, precursor. I do enjoy the new canon, although the next 30 minutes probably won't sound that way. I'm in the same boat. I think the issue for me when it comes to Legends is that I have read every single book I own but 3. And one of those 3 I want to read, but I've just it's like that on the pedestal thing where you don't want to mess it up. You don't want to get into it and be like, it wasn't as good as I was hoping. And that's Choices of One. Somehow, I don't know how that happened. I managed to. I have it, and I just never got to getting into that one. I read the one before it, and then that one came out, and something got me distracted. I was doing something else, and I never got back around to it. And then the other 2 were Clone Wars novels, Siege and Gambit.
They're good. I enjoyed those.
And I just, some reason, I don't remember what it was. I was getting in the first one, and I just was like, I could not stick to it. And so those are the only ones that I have on my shelves that I haven't gone back and read. But aside from that, the only thing I really have, if I want to take that adventure, I know it's all there, and I know what's coming. So that excitement's gone. So that's I feel like sometimes I don't want to be the guy that's mad because Lucasfilm could continue to put out new content and sell it next to the old content that they are selling next to the new content of the new canon. Because there's a part of me that gets bitter about that, because there's nothing new for me. Now, if I was new to Star Wars in general, man, that's awesome. You've got a good 5-10 years worth, and I'm pointing over to my bookshelf over here. It's over 367 books. I mean, that's a lot of stuff for somebody who's never gone into Star Wars. And and you think of the stuff that's new, and for me, my biggest issue is and I hate to even say it, but I think it's the quickest way to round it up. I'm the not my Luke camp. Like I had a hard time with the Luke that we got on screen. So for me, it's like that's been an issue there. And so the new books and stuff that we've been getting, I feel like there's nothing as risked as there was in the other ones. I mean, the New Jedi Order, they kill off Chewie in the first book. You get to the middle book of the series, they kill off Han and Leia's kid, and they take the planet that's the capital of the entire galaxy forever, and the aliens take it, destroy a moon, and move it. Like, they move the planet. I mean, some major stuff. Ithor gets destroyed. Like, things that actually had ramifications. You think about the Dark Horse comic for Dark Empire. Luke goes to the dark side. That's referenced a lot in the books. But you don't get a book aspect of it. You don't get a flashback in the book. You have to go get the comic and read it. So there was that aspect of the Legends that would always push you that direction. But it's like right now everything you get is complementary to the films or to the TV episodes and stuff. And so it's like it's focusing you to that. It's not focusing you to what it has. Dr. Aphra is probably one of the few characters you have in the new canon that is the opposite. She's more of like your Legends character. She's the character that exists on the comics and then got into a book. And, maybe here she's in a cartoon now because I think she's in the Forces of Destiny. I think she made it there. I could be wrong. But, she hasn't made it into a TV show or a movie yet.
No, that's right.
But and so it's like, there's a lot less of that, and it feels like the aspects of that is because we're going to a different direction of our storytelling. I mean, Legends before was the story of the Skywalker saga. Is canon, we're putting that to bed. What is the story now? It's the Solo story.
It really is.
I mean, it's Kylo's story now. And what have we done after we killed Han Solo? We go back and tell Han's story because it's a Solo universe. That wasn't the case in Legends. What they do in Legends, they killed off Han's sons. Both of them died. One of them had a kid. It was a girl. No more Solos. They're gone. Jaina marries a Bell. She's an empress now. So, it was a Skywalker story. This one's now a Solo story. So there's different shifts in that. But one thing that they push with that is Rey's a nobody. It doesn't really matter who Rey is because Star Wars isn't about special people. It's about everybody. Anybody can be special.
That's right.
So there's that aspect too. So now all the kind of stories just don't really feel like they have the same weight and depth that they had before. Like, I always got excited as heck when you found out someone was someone else's character or bloodline. Like, I kept waiting to find out Zane Carrick was a Skywalker. That, like, somewhere along the line, like, his family became Shmi's family. Like, I was waiting for that connection. And everyone's like, I hate it when everything's connected. But to me, that was awesome. Like, that was a great thing because it was like you were getting to see that window of that family line and then to find out in very convoluted ways it was all one family. I always felt like that was the destiny of the Force, the chosen one at work here.
And Jill always wanted to do that. Now, folks, I do have to say we have a ring-in today who wants to have his thoughts on your podcast. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Ben Kenobi. I love Star Wars beyond the films.
There you go. Ben Kenobi.
Yeah!
Who would have thought? Isn't that great? Now, folks, that's actually the Celebrity Voice Changer app. And believe it or not, on a certain Phantom Awakens radio, Ben popped up a few times, and Jedi Jones didn't know what to do.
Nice. Stumped him.
Yeah, it stumped him. We started. It was a commentary of what was it, A New Hope, and all of a sudden he started talking about Ben Kenobi, and then, oh hello, are you talking about me? And you should have seen Sam, and he's like, what?
Oh, that's great. Oh, yeah. I love it.
It's great.
Oh,
it's
awesome.
Great. But you're onto something there. Like we had a connection thing, and I think that's one of the great things in any story is connecting the dots too. So especially as a family one. Rey's situation, I have a feeling that somehow, look, they wouldn't connect her and Ren if it wasn't not meant for family-wise, but I think maybe they'll end up together, and that's how she joins the family.
I honestly, when we were in The Last Jedi, I was pushing it. I was really there. I was like, yeah, here we go. And I felt like before Carrie Fisher passed, we were definitely going to get Jedi Leia. I mean, that was something that, again, I loved about Legends. She became a Jedi. You know, that was something that really was important to me. And so to have that not be able to happen was a sad acceptance of reality. So we had to have a changing in direction here. But we also got JJ back. So,
yeah.
You know, I've always felt like Kylo was just lying out his little slick Sith-like, because he's not really a Sith. I felt like he was lying. So JJ has the opportunity to put something back in that court, whether it be that she's related to anyone important, or if she happens to be maybe, say, and I don't know, am I dating here, but maybe she's the daughter of a Jason Syndulla or something, you know? Like, I mean, or, you know, Ezra gets found sometime along the line and he ends up having a kid with Sabine or something, and she's got a Mandalorian connection that she doesn't know about. You know, I mean, because, like, think about Karan Horn. One of the greatest things I loved about that character was he discovered his Jedi heritage later in life and went and explored it when he needed to. In I, Jedi, his wife gets kidnapped, and he's like, he exercised every political opportunity he had as a member of Rogue Squadron to try to get her found. Couldn't do it. So he's like, you know, I'm going to go to Luke. Luke couldn't quite do it, because Karan was the one that had the connection. But Karan also had the ability because his dad was a Jedi. So he explores that. He learns what it's like to be a Jedi. And then he has issues where he can't do it as a Jedi. So he learns to, you know, I'm going to have to be both. I'm going to have to be myself, which is a detective. I'm going to have to be myself as a fighter pilot. And I'm going to have to be myself as a Jedi. And I'm going to have to do this. And he became one with the Force in a sense and got what was needed to be done. So I would love to see an aspect of that. We find out there's more to Rey. And to come full circle like that is the I am your father moment. And that, to me, that would make this trilogy a lot more impressive. Because right now, with what Rian Johnson did, like, the more I watch it, the less I like it. And I hate the fact that that, for me, has been my reality. But I did watch it just last night. So, like, I haven't given up on it. I really enjoy a lot of it. Like, there are a lot of parts. But I really do not like the idea that I have to turn my back on the Jedi and the Jedi Order. Like, I would love to see Rey create a new Jedi Order by the end of Episode 9, because I'm not ready to see that go. So, like, if she has to be a family member for that to happen, so be it. I don't think she has to be, but I want to see that happen. But to have that connection and have it be something that means more that we explore later, I think means more in general to the new canon than what we're getting with a lot of our side stories. You know, Del Rey, I hate to say it, has been dropping the ball in side stories. Disney Lucasfilm Press, the Penguin ones, those young adult books have been on point. Rebel Rising, a great fill-in for everything that you ever wanted to know about Jyn Erso. And that's the best of what you could be getting in these new canon stories. And they are hitting it. Like, Lost Stars, another one. You get a 5-year gap in time. Yeah, those are the stories that count. They matter. You like that.
And the Luke Skywalker one was brilliant. I mean, it's probably one of the more enjoyable ones I've had. But even Ben's got a few ideas.
They should make a movie of me playing golf with a laser sword.
That's spot on, Kenobi. Spot on.
But yeah, they haven't forgotten that it's all about adventure and mythology, you know, not just, all right, here's what's happened before the movie. All right, I became a fruit picker. Then I went from that to filling up land speeders at the petrol station. And then that's the humdrum. And then I worked in a cafe, and I saw Kenobi for 2 seconds in the cafe. I mean,
that's like Canto Bight. I mean, John Jackson Miller, one of my favorite Legends writers, and the stories that came out of that. Like, I mean, I love you, John, but those weren't your most inspired stories, and I think it wasn't your fault. I think it was the content, like the fact that they wanted to connect it to that, and I think they should have gone Godfather. That would have been a much better Vegas type story.
Oh, hell yes! And the thing is, you can do it, and bring in them damn huts. Bring them huts in. Yeah,
huts and Bothans, man. I'm ready to see a Bothan.
Oh, yeah. Bothan.
I'm worried about the Bothan. The longer we don't see a Bothan, the more I'm like, is this Yoda's species? Is this the next Yoda species? Are we not ever... I want some answers, man. What's a Bothan look like? Does it look like Legend still? Is it a horse? Is it a goat? A giraffe? A donkey? What am I looking at here?
And then you got the huts. I mean, it could really get down to a really dark, again, Godfather feel. Sure, you know, he says, he make an offer you can't refuse.
Mm-hmm. And think about the aspect with the Hutts that you've got such a wide array of playing that. You know, I mean, they get gluttonous, they get slow, they get hoverboards, they get really cool mechanical legs like a caterpillar. Or you got the young ones, or like, was it Belduran the Hutt that went up against Leia? Like, I mean, he was moving fast like a snake. You're like, holy cow! He's like, oh man, like there are some cool angles that you can play up with the Hutts, and the fact that we haven't seen Rhoda again. Like, I keep thinking, you know, there's someone who, you know, Jabba's gone, but where's Rhoda? I mean, we never saw him on the sail barge, so clearly Jabba sent him off to either run something for him or send him off for some protection. Both of which seem feasible.
And the one thing people don't realise that it should be based off what George was basing this on. And I don't know how much of it's true, but let's just face it, Frank Herbert was pumping out God Emperor of Dune, same time that George was sitting there going, a slug like a Godfather. You know? Yeah, that'd be, oh, Frank Herbert. Oh, that's really good. Sorry, Frank. You know?
Tatooine, a desert planet.
But you think about it, even some of the things, the Hutts, they can withstand laser blasts. Well, that's all straight out of God Emperor of Dune, the laser guns in Dune. You can't shoot them because they're practically, he's armoured.
See, and that was one of the things that drove me nuts about the changes from canon to Legends, because that was in Legends, that was true. It was very hard to kill a Hutt. You couldn't poison them, you couldn't shoot them. You know, lightsaber burns, like it would work, but like you had to work it. And yet now we had in the Clone Wars, we found out that Sly Snoodles shoots Zero with just one shot to the back. Like, wow, really? Wow, I get heartburn thinking about it. Like. Come on, Filoni, that's the best you can do for Hutts. Like, they were intimidating. Now they're pawns in anybody's blackmail scheme if you got a gun in your back pocket.
That's it. But you know what? I kind of like that they're now, even with stories like Star Wars Resistance, taking something to me that feels a little bit like Episode 1 Racer, the old Nintendo game, and really just playing with it, adding a little bit of the actual militaristic part of it in there. But again, that was a great little game with a great story. So it's great to see they're doing it with Starfighters.
So I've been kicking this thought around with our patrons on the Star Wars. I think that by the time this series is over, what we're going to see is the reinforcements of the Resistance, right? Because think about it, when Force Awakens comes out, the Resistance they're still small, ragtag, and then their fleet gets about wiped out. Like, I mean, the book talks about there are like a handful of starfighters left, and then the bombers come in The Last Jedi, right? Because that's the last. They happen to have them off on another mission, so we brought in some extra ships, so we do have some more ships, but it's still not a lot. And then they get wiped out, so we're like, wow. And then all the rebellion gets all onto their ship, and that ship gets whittled down, and they got a couple of ships, and then gets on the planet, and they barely all get out there, all fitting on a freighter. That's a pretty small resistance at this point. We're going to need some backup. Now, the Colossus is a fueling depot, and it's a ship. I mean, you've got these racers that are learning to become a crew, a family. They're already a protective force, in a sense, for the Colossus. I mean, you're talking about winning the hearts and minds, in a sense, of the people at this point, because that's what Poe's mission is. We got to know who's on our side when the Sith goes down. You better be ready. So, you know, we're finding all this out. So you're finding out who is in the know, and you're going to find out who's not. And so at some point, you're going to have the explosion of what's going on with The Force Awakens and the First Order taking over. And when that happens, whether or not you've picked a side, the people that are on the First Order side are going to rise arms, and they're going to point their guns. And in that moment, you're going to have the Resistance group snap their fingers, they're going to do their thing, and I'm betting you're going to see the Colossus at some point showing up with Poe going, hey, we're not done with this fight, let's get to it. I mean, so that's exciting. But the getting to there, I'm kind of like, man, like I almost wish they wouldn't have picked when they did. Like, I feel like it's forever away to get to the really good juice, but I know it's coming.
You know, I looked at too, like, we need some fresh, rebellious pirate characters. I know we got Lando, which is great. You know, how you doing, you old pirate? You know, he's going to be in there. But yeah. I want to have a couple of. I keep going to British gangsters, but that's sort of like rough and tumble in between. Not quite great gangsters, not quite crooks, and not like Benicio del Toro's character. these guys still good guys, but they're just not quite good enough to get the job done. I'm thinking, like a little bit like the Tommy and what's his name, and Turkish in Snatch. These two, they want to win. They want to do the best they can, but they're not quite good enough. You go, what's your matter, Tommy? Is it Mandalorians? Like,
yeah. The upside, though, about where they placed it, again, getting back to the Solo aspect, Han could show up at any point because Han's still alive and kicking and could be basically looking for the Falcon. I mean, you could have him show up and be like following a lead. He keeps coming back into that cantina. Why? Because that's where all the leads are at. He's been close, man. He's on them boys. So that's a great opportunity there, too, is you can at least get Han in. I mean, we've already known Leia's there, so she's going to figure prominently. But now, because you've got that placement, that at least is going to work.
Oh, I agree. Totally. I mean, it would work, wouldn't it? They've at least got something there.
Han Solo is a chicken.
That's because he could have done the Kessel run in under 5 parsecs. He was trying.
That's it. One of the things I love too is that we are, after episode 9, without a doubt moving away from Mr. Skywalker and moving on to other areas. The Skywalker family has been the mainstay, obviously, of George's run. It's going to be interesting just to see new, fresh content.
Yeah, it's. I think one of the things that really gets exciting for me is again getting back to the Mandalorian, the TV aspect, and I think it looks like they're going to do such a good job that anything you're going to put out in a movie is going to be measured against that. And I think about Game of Thrones, and you take a season of Game of Thrones and place that up against a lot of movies. And that's really good storytelling. Any one of the seasons you pick, like that. I mean, that's and I was thinking about that with Resistance. Like, I have only watched the first hour. I haven't seen the other episodes. I've gotten to that binge point. Ooh, that sounds like a Flashpoint thing. I went into my DVR because I set programs to record, and I'll forget about them. Case in point, Fear the Walking Dead. I watched it up until the jump point, and they took the break. I forgot that they came back on. I totally missed it. It was a week after it was over, and I look in there, and I'm like, 15 episodes to watch. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm binge watching it all. And honestly, when you binge watch a show, there's something a little more satisfying and gratifying about it. And I think that was one of my issues with the Clone Wars originally, was when I watched it on air, and it was so out of order, and then going back when it was on Netflix and watching it in the chronological order, a much better experience. So, that's going to be something they're going to have to measure against. And if they're going to go away from telling a saga, right, unless they're doing just trilogies, which of course could work because Star Wars kind of did put the footnote on trilogies, but that throughput of a saga, the fact that it was, this is all Skywalker, or the droids, it's all the droid story. Look, hey, see, I saw a droid in Solo. It's all connected through the droids. So you could have that angle, but that's something that you're going to have to contend with, because the TV show is definitely going to be able to build on that and have so much more history throughout the season, whereas you got an hour to 3 hours max that you're trying to tell this stuff. I mean, it's possible. I saw a great fan fiction, or a fan movie, The Odyssey. I don't know if you saw that one yet. 12 minutes.
I saw your post today about it. I'm going to have to check it out, because, you're pretty wrapped with it.
Blew my mind. Granted, I haven't seen a lot of fanfics, so I mean, I don't know how many other gems are out there, but this is hands down the best one I've ever seen. And it's just a fan one. So, yeah, there's a bigger bar out there, and I think some of the successes and the reactions of some of the storytelling we've got so far from the movie sense, I think that's the one that gets criticized the most.
Oh yeah.
And once you got this TV show out there, it's really going to raise that bar, because people are going to be like, the movies just haven't been doing it for me lately. Everything else has been pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Except for they're pointing us to the movies, because the big stuff's happening on the movies. But the movies just aren't hitting. Can we just not do the movies and put the big stuff back in the books and in the comics and give us some cool games? I worry about that shift, because once you get to that shift, Disney's gonna be like, well, there's no money in this. You just want us to throw money at the problem. No, we're gonna walk away. We're gonna put it in the vault. There's a phrase no one's been throwing around in a while. Put it in the vault. That could easily happen to Star Wars at some point. And you can still have, Star Wars Land and all this other great stuff, and still experience Star Wars celebrations, all that stuff. But you might not get to have your movies anymore, because just the turn of the tide. Yeah,
I mean, let's face it, regardless of how you feel about Last Jedi, it's such a divisive movie. There's no middle ground. People either like it or they don't. And that's.
And I feel like I'm in the middle ground, and it's terrible because I know I'm in the middle ground, but I feel like I hate it. Right? So I know I don't hate it. I just hate one part of it. I hate what they did to Luke. That's the only hate I have. I loved what they did with the character. I loved the fights he did and everything. But that was just fundamentally, I'm in the Hamill camp of that's not my Luke, man. It was really hard to swallow for me. But everything else I absolutely loved, and so I'm in that. I know I'm in that middle ground, but that one aspect makes it where almost everything gets tainted for me. And I think that gets back to I have always been a Luke Skywalker fan in Legends. Like that was, I would always say it didn't matter what was happening, I would get whatever's new for Luke. Because I found out with Shadows of Mindor, I didn't like going back with my Luke. If I'm already up to 40 years, 40-year-old Luke, I don't want to go back to 22-year-old Luke. That wasn't in it for me. But I could get that 40-year-old Luke book, and I would have that done in a day, 2 days. I could not put it down.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other book of Luke in the other time frame that I'd already passed, it was just I couldn't do it. It was a slugfest. And so for me, that's been a big change and shift. I'm like, man, what'd you do to my Luke? So that's been a hard swallow. So it definitely makes me at times feel like I come across like a hater because I'm definitely not as impressed as I was hoping I would have been. And I definitely went in trying to have no expectations because I was afraid of something like that happening in the beginning. Because I've always loved Star Wars. I've identified with Star Wars. I named my kids after characters from Legends. So I've got that aspect as well that I'm always fighting with. So I'm like, well, maybe that's why, because I got a daughter named Jaina and she doesn't exist anymore, and so she's only my daughter, not Han's daughter anymore. So maybe that's why. It's like I'm constantly thinking of maybe there's other reasons why. No, it gets back to Luke. And I keep thinking if JJ makes it where Rey reestablishes a Jedi Order, that alone I will be okay with everything. I think I could swallow that. And I think I could digest it, because right now I'm not. It's heartburn. It's not digesting.
It's not making me excited like I used to be, And it's not the characters. It's not. I think it was the length of the film. It's the cutting. It's a beautiful film. It looks great, But I think it's making Luke a Force addict, because at the end of the day, he turned away from his problem, and then came back to it, and it killed him.
Did you see Hamill's tweet about that too?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, he's right.
Junkie. It's like, we were talking about that on Star Wars Report too, because Kyle Katarn, his character. Oh yeah. So I think it was Jedi Knight 1 or 2. He goes away. He does the military thing. He comes back, and so the tutorial of the game is him relearning how to use the Force. The Force push, Force pull. And he mentions it to Luke, I can't believe I can't do this anymore. And it's basically at that point, it's lifting weights. He stopped doing it, so he lost his muscles. He's got to rebuild his muscles back up, kind of thing. So it's one of those things. It always reminded me of that. Okay, so that's kind of what happened, huh, Luke? But again, a testament to Luke's power, though. He was able to pull off a massive feat, even though, it did kill him. It was still a massive feat after not touching the Force in a long time. It's basically like when I was younger, I could drink a half gallon of vodka in a night, and I haven't drank any since I've been 21. I haven't drank anything, and it'd be like being able to do it again, and then the next day it'd kill me. But I did it that night, man. I was right back to it, like riding a bike, man. I'm back on that horse, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a case of a lot of it's the satisfaction that we didn't get Rambo Luke, or not necessarily Rambo Luke, but one thing that was smart about what Ryan did, he foretold what was going to happen at the start of the film, and then it actually happened. The whole idea that Luke says, "What, you think I'm going to stand in front of the First Order with a laser sword?" And he does exactly that, and that's beautiful. That really is poetic.
Yep. See, and I feel like there's one scene missing in all of that. Okay, so when Rey escapes from the throne room and takes Ren's shuttle and escapes, right? Mm. There should have been a moment where Luke reached out to her. We see her on the shuttle, and Luke shows up next to her, and he says, "Look, Chewie is over here. You need to go to Chewie, and you need to tell him to fly here. There's an old escape, a collapsed tunnel from when I was in the rebellion, and you need to get there." Because that's the one aspect about everything. Like, they got lucky that she managed to get there. They were trapped. Like, once Ren found out that was a Force illusion, they should have been hosed. But miraculously, now, if it would have been Luke doing that as a Force projection, boom, more props to Luke, and I'm a little more happy. But they didn't have that, and so it's kind of like there's that plot hole of, like, how did she happen to know? Where did she find Chewie? Like, let's follow the foxes, and that would have been a great one too, like, follow the foxes, they'll show you how. Like, they could have done something there, and maybe they did, and it's in a scene that we never seen, but I don't know. That, to me, that would have been one little thing that they could have added that would have gone a long way for all of the stuff that Luke actually did there at the end. It was a brilliant fight, but when you think about it and you go back and you're like, it's all an illusion, it's like, oh, well, it's pretty clear it was an illusion. Because when you don't think it's an illusion, him doing that little tabletop spin, that's badass. But then you're like, oh, it's just lights and mirrors. He's not really doing anything.
You know what I thought they should have done, and this is the ending I would have gone for. And I tell you what, it would have been anybody's game for the 9th film, would be this. Have them hold off the Falcon until just after the laser sword fight with Ren. So everything's crushed. The speeders of those weird B-wing speeders all smashed. They're done. Poe's back in and going, we got a Haid, man. We got a Haid, Oh, who's this Luke guy? And how does his thing? The walkers have gone right up to the door. Do you know what I would do? I'd have Ren leave the landing ramp, go out, have his little fisticuffs with Luke. Right, Grandpa, let's go. And they have their little fight. But then, all of a sudden, Rey comes out of nowhere with a Falcon and destroys every walker. So, how good would that be? Because then it leaves them either he's still got his ship, she's got hers, they both get away, and the First Order's crushed, and so is the Resistance. And it'd be Episode 9, having both of them having to rebuild, maybe set it 10 years later, both at the peak of their skills.
Yeah, well, and that gets me back to the unlimited resources of Snoke. We're talking, troopers and things like that. Man, if you've got the Resistance whittled down to what they are now, and there's still, a couple thousand planets with a couple million, First Order troopers ready, they are so hosed. So you do have to kind of limit what's going on with that. So it makes me think, what are these unlimited resources then? Because it clearly can't be people.
Because I still remember to this day that, a lot of people disappointed with Snoke going early. I think it was a good shock, that they did that. But the reaction was almost immediate in the audience at the Australian cinemas. Everyone basically called it out as BS straight away.
Oh, really? See, there was a lot of gasps. I was even surprised. I wasn't expecting it. And I think that's what worries me about Rian Johnson's approach was, it come across later I did everything no one was expecting. But to do that as a style, then that's to be expected. Yeah. I didn't expect that from your style, so I went into that one. Yeah, shame on me. That's like going when I went to watch the Blair Witch Project. No one told me that it wasn't fake. I was under the impression these were tapes that were actually found in the woods. Come on. So I was like, oh my God, honey, oh my God. I got home that night, I could not sleep. I was sitting there on the bed, and the guy was standing in the corner, holy crap. Oh, yeah, I bought that. Look, I was hooked. I bought that one hard. So.
Gotta love it. Absolutely love it. Now, for the folks here at home, what are you got coming up on your podcast in the next week or so?
Oh, well, me and Riley and Bruce, we got together to talk about some fun, exciting things going on recently with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We were talking about the theft from the Mandalorian set, things of that nature. Me and Nathan, we're still on the lookout for an editor now that he's got a little new baby Cade after Cade Skywalker, Luke's great-great-grandson. So now that he's got that kid in the picture, he's got no way to edit. Like I told him, I said, man, once you got a kid involved, it's a little harder to put headphones on and commit yourself to listening to two people and cut it down and make it sound beautiful. I mean, we sound like a couple honking swans at first, but when it's done, it's like golden. But yeah, so we're looking for another editor to get that going again. We've got some stuff on the pipeline, but we haven't had a chance to sit down and record it because we're like, well, what's the point without an editor? We don't want to get a big docket, because we did that once before, and man, that took us like 8 months to climb out of that hole. We recorded so much in one night. Yeah, it was great. And then me and my daughter, we were doing the Padawan's Perspective, which that's been on hold. She got into varsity cheerleading competition, dance competition. They ended up going to state, going to Disneyland, had a whole bunch of stuff come up. So that's been on a long hiatus, but we're hoping to get it back now that Resistance is going. She still hasn't watched the last of Rebels. She's caught some of the episodes and stuff, knows the big things, but she hasn't sat down and watched it in the chronological order as we were doing. So I look forward to getting back to that too. And of course, you can find all that at thestarwarsreport.com.
So you've got to go and check it out, folks, because us here at the Fantha Tracks are all huge fans, and I've been a fan of what you've been doing for many years. Many nights of work, putting the headphones on, listening to you talk about much lore of the Legends universe, and it's always insightful, entertaining, and most of all, fun. I want to thank the one, the only, Mark Hurliman for joining us here on the Fantha from Down Under.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight, and join us next time as we chat more Star Wars here on the Fantha Tracks, the Fantha from Down Under. Go and check us out at iTunes and any other place where you can find a great podcast. We'll see you next time. May the Force be with you.